Hello and welcome back to my Bake Along Classic Cake series, and today's recipe that I'm going to be baking with you guys is a classic. It's like one of the oldest recipes ever, one of the first cakes I ever baked, and it is a lemon drizzle cake. And if you've never made one before, I don't quite know how you've managed to get through this far without it. It is a real citrusy, zingy little number. It's really super easy and it doesn't require any decoration because it already looks really awesome, and I'm going to show you how to make it. So hopefully you have got all your ingredients ready. I put all the ingredients on Instagram on Tuesday, so if you haven't got your ingredients ready, stop the video now and head off to the shops and get all your bits and bobs. So you're going to need 225 grams of soft unsalted butter, 225 grams of caster sugar, 4 large eggs, 2 lemons, and 225 grams of self-raising flour. So as well as having all your ingredients ready, you want to make sure that your oven is preheating while you're getting on with making the cake. So it's 170 degrees C. Right, the first thing that we need to do is cream the butter and the sugar together. I'm using my freestanding mixer. You can do this with a hand whisk, the electric ones, or just with a wooden spoon, brute strength. So I'm going to put the sugar and the butter in. And you want to put that onto a medium speed and beat it for about 5 minutes. So while that is creaming together, this is a great opportunity to get your tin ready, and I'm going to be using a regular loaf tin. If you haven't got one of these, you can use an 8-inch round tin. Just make sure it's fairly deep to give it room to rise. And to prepare your tin, I would recommend greasing it and lining it. So I'm just going to be using a spray grease. You can use butter or anything at all, like oily stuff, and give it a good spray. And then I'm using grease-proof paper, which I have made quite long so that I've got enough to come up the sides to give it to give me some extra bits that I can hold on to take it out later. And also it's just wide enough for the bottom of the tin. So you might be wondering why I'm using grease-proof paper to line the tin rather than, say, maybe buttering and flouring it, which is, you do in some recipes. I find that the flour-butter combination creates like a weird film on the side of your cake, and for a cake like this, which is going to be exposed and naked in all its glory, you don't want to have like a crusty film around the outside because it's going to really make it look ugly. So that's my tin ready. While this has still got a little bit left going, I'm going to zest my lemons. So make sure that you give your lemons a good wash, especially if they're not unwaxed lemons. You don't want any kind of weird wax stuff going in. And just use a nice fine grater. So I think this is a classic, but if lemon's not your thing, then you could use other citrus fruits. Like I've actually done a lime and coconut drizzle cake on my channel, which you can check out. Blood orange is really nice when that's in season, as are bergamots, which are similar to a lemon but with a slightly different flavour. That should do it. Now this has had 5 minutes, so I'm just going to turn the speed down a little bit because it's time to add the eggs. And I'm using 4 large eggs, and I'm going to crack them in one by one and then give it a good beat after each one. I always use large free-range eggs. If you can get a hold of free-range organic eggs, then you will really see the benefit in your cakes. Not only is it better for the hens, it's just they make such better cakes. So make sure you do that. You'll get a better colour and all sorts. I really loved seeing all of your bakes from a couple of weeks ago when we did the Devil's Food cake. There were so many, I was really blown away, so well done all of you. In particular, some of the ones I really liked were Jem Lee at Magic, Hey It's Jew, Moni's Minis, Nathan O'Ribby and Luna Luma, who all produced fantastic cakes. So keep up the good work, and if you do bake this one, make sure you put it on Instagram and use the hashtag CupcakeGemmaBakes. So my eggs are combining nicely, so once your mixture is all nice and smooth, just add the next egg. This is one of my favourite cakes, and all the way back from my childhood this was one of my favourites because my grandma used to make it for me, which is testament really to how popular it has remained throughout time, because it was one of the cakes she baked first when she was a child, so it's been around for a long time and it's still rocking. So while these are going, I'm actually going to put my lemon zest in just before the last egg goes in. And there isn't really any hard and fast rule about when to put the zest in. You can put it in right at the beginning if you want to really batter the zest up a bit, or you can put it in with the flour. It's really up to you. So that's my last egg, and it's looking pretty good. It's starting to curdle a little bit, and that's absolutely fine. Do not panic if that happens. But because I'm using a freestanding mixer, I'm actually going to stop the whole thing and give it a good scrape down just to make sure that all of the buttery bits are mixing in with the egg. This wouldn't be so much of a problem if you're doing it by hand, obviously, because you can kind of move yourself around. But once you've scraped, you can whack it back on just for a final beating, just to make sure all of that gets mixed in. Just for a minute or so. So the next ingredient that goes in is the last ingredient of the actual sponge itself, and that is self-raising flour, and I've got 225 grams. Now, I quite often get asked about self-raising flour for people who are living in places where it's not really a thing. Over in Britain, it is a massive thing. Like, we've always had self-raising flour, but I'm discovering that it's not a thing in the rest of the world. So you can actually make it yourself, and we did a Tuesday tips video. I'll put that in the description box below, the link to that, so you can check it out. But I've got 225 grams, and I'm going to sieve it just to make this super light. Now, you need to fold the flour in, and you can do that with your freestanding mixer on a low speed. I sometimes quite like to just do it by hand, and it's just really simple. You want to get your spatula or a metal spoon and just cut through the middle and scrape around the sides, just to incorporate it evenly. And the reason you want to do it carefully like this is that you just created loads of air, firstly with your creaming of the butter and sugar, then with the eggs and their magical powers, and so you don't want to then sort of beat it up and knock all the air out and end up with kind of a tough flat cake. So it's really important at this stage to be gentle with it. And once you're satisfied that it's all smooth and well incorporated, you can then pop it into your tin. Just dump it in and we'll spread it out in a bit. Now, obviously, your tin might be slightly different to mine, and they come in all different sizes and shapes. So the general rule is 2/3 or 3/4 full. It needs to have room on the sides to grow. And if you have a bit of leftover batter, then just pop it into some cupcakes rather than forcing it into the tin, because you don't want to have an overflowing loaf. It needs to look pretty, right? And I'm going to just level this off with a palette knife to see where I'm at. You don't need to make it like spirit level flat. You just want to level it out a little bit so that it doesn't have too much work to do in the oven. And I'm now going to bake it. So we've already preheated our oven to 170 degrees C, and this takes quite a long time. It takes about 55 minutes, but I'm going to check it at 45 and 50 minutes just to make sure. So that is the cake on its way to becoming awesome. So now I've got a bit of clearing up to do. Why don't you make yourself a cup of tea while you're at it, like me? And I'll also be hanging out a bit, so I will be reading your comments below and on Instagram if you're watching it live. So if you do have any questions, please let me know and I will do my best to answer them. But now I've also got to clear up this mess. So pause your video and I'll see you back here in 45 to 55 minutes. Oh, it smells really good. And I'm just going to check it with my skewer, which is clean. So I'm going to leave this to one side just to cool a little bit and get on with making the drizzle. Now the drizzle part is what gives the lemon drizzle its name, and it is very, very simple. So remember the lemons that we used earlier? Well, I hope you didn't throw yours away because these have got so much good stuff inside. All the juice is going to be used for both of these lemons, and I'm adding it to 100 grams of caster sugar. So cut your lemons in half, and you can use whatever kind of juicer you like. I've got this really cool contraption which really gets a lot of the juice out. So I'm going to go straight into the sugar here. Now luckily my lemons are nice and big and they're full of juice. Ooh, if you struggle to get the juice out of your lemons, I'd recommend rolling them beforehand. It just kind of softens them up a little bit. You just kind of roll them on top of your worktop. It works really well for all sorts of things you need to juice, like limes. And once all the juice is in, you need to give it a good stir. I'm just using a little whisk for that, but you can, if you don't have one of those, you can use a little spoon. And you're not trying to completely dissolve all the sugar, although it will dissolve a little bit. And if you feel like it's a bit too thin, just add a little bit more sugar. And likewise, if it's too thick, add a little bit more juice. So the consistency you're looking for is a little bit like maple syrup or a light corn syrup. Certainly nothing as thick and gloopy as like treacle or golden syrup or anything like that. And that should do it. So this is ready to go. Now, what are we gonna do? We're gonna pour it on the cake, of course, because this needs to soak into our cake. And it's really important to do this while the cake's still warm, or you know, even it's still quite hot actually, this one. So the first thing to do is to stab the cake all over with a skewer, just to give it some holes to sink into. I think that's enough holes now. And just to make it a bit easier, why don't you pour it into a jug first, just to make drizzling a little bit less messy. And then you just want to pour the whole lot over your entire cake and don't miss any of it, like fill all the holes. It might seem like it's pooling a little bit in the corners, but don't worry, all of that is going to sink into the cake and it's going to be so moist and yummy. But it's still a bit warm, so you want to leave that to cool for 15 to 20 minutes. I recommend serving this slightly warm, but pause the video now and we'll come back and have a slice with a nice cup of tea. And the drizzle cake is not completely cool because, like I said before, this is best eaten when it's just still a little bit warm. So it's still warm to the touch, my tin, but I'm going to pull it out using my overlapping greaseproof paper. Very, very useful. Get rid of that. And then hopefully during the break you found yourself a nice serving platter or a plate to put it on, as I have. And it's totally fine to handle now, so I'm just going to take the paper off and pop it onto my nice board. And this is very exciting because now it's time to cut myself a slice, so hopefully that's what you're about to do. So get yourself a nice sharp knife, you don't want a ragged edge, and cut yourself a big generous slab. And there it is, a delicious, moist, zesty lemon drizzle cake that hopefully you are looking at right now in real life, wherever you are. So well done. Don't forget, you must take a picture and put it on Instagram using the hashtag CupcakeGemmaBakes so that I can see it and so that everyone else can see what you've been up to as well, because it's a really fun thing to bake with friends. And I will be back in a couple of weeks for another bake along, and this one is going to be for a bundt cake. So this is a really good excuse to get that bundt tin you've been dreaming about. It's going to be on Sunday the 10th of March, which actually just happens to be the day after my birthday, so feel free to get me a present if you like. And I will be putting the shopping list for that on Instagram at CupcakeGemma on Tuesday the 5th of March, so make sure you're following me so that you don't miss that. And I'll be back at the regular time on Thursday at 6:30 with a little something from the C&D gang, so I will see you then. Bye. We'll try it again.